one of the biggest questions that we get from people joining our Facebook group, because on the way in, I ask you, do you have any questions about your retirement? I also ask you, where did you hear about us? Now, if you aren't in the Retire Right Facebook group, number one, when you go to join, where did you hear about us? If you can just put down episode 307 or 309 or 313, whatever episode that you heard, because I think in Facebook land now, maybe about 70% of the requests we get to join our various groups are spam and bots. So it will really help us. I heard Glen on the podcast. So all that to say, one of the big things that we get asked is, how much do I need to retire? When can I retire? Then the next question, kind of why we did this podcast, was how to retire. But today we're going to come back and we're going to look at some examples of what retirement might look like based on some examples of assets, and we'll look at the pension cutoff and all that stuff. But this episode, it's for you, the podcast listener. And my guest today, he was on the podcast a couple of weeks ago, Nathan Fradley. Nathan, welcome back to Pod Vegas.
Thanks for having me back so quickly.
I know. We're doing it remote. We're not in the lobby of a hotel now. But look, we're going to talk about all this stuff. You put some scenarios together. I will say, if you want to actually have a look at the scenarios, I'll put a link in the comments or the show notes, and I might even share it in the Facebook group to the YouTube channel, because we're recording this on YouTube, and I can share my screen and you'll see all the assumptions. So bear with us if you're listening this audio only. We'll try and explain as much as we can how we can, but there's certainly a one-pager that you can look at when we do this on YouTube. Anyway, let's do a podcast right now. Nathan, I asked you to put some things together, just some case studies, examples about, what does retirement income look like for different amounts, looking at Centrelink, looking at super balances, looking if we're single, if we're a couple, all that stuff. Before we kind of share our screen and get into the nitty-gritty numbers, is there anything you want to kind of say as an opening statement, declare your stake in the ground and all that stuff before we hit go?
These scenarios are super basic. That's what I'm going to put out there. So what we're assuming here is that you own a home, which straight away, it's a pillar of retirement. It makes retiring a lot easier. So if you're a non-homeowner by choice or by not, the numbers are going to be a bit different for you. But I also think, this is a straight down the line money and super. Put it into an account-based pension at 67 and draw down. And there is other strategies. There is other things you can do. There is added complexity we can bring into this. But really, I think, Glenn, when you came to me and said, we want to look at how much do we need to retire. Let's bring it back to some basics, and then you and I can flesh out some of those nuances, I think, and that's the key. And so I relied on those ASFA, I said it right for the first time this time, numbers as well, to give us a bit of an idea of what does the regulator say around this, and what's the outlook look like.
So Nathan, ASFA, we've got all these kind of numbers in this spreadsheet, and I'll put it on the screen in a second. But what is ASFA or ASFA? ASFA.
Yeah. So I did say the regulator before. It's actually just a industry body, the Association of Superannuation Funds in Australia.
Right.
So it's a group of super funds that do some research into this. But these numbers, and I'm sure you've known these for a long time, Glenn, advisors have been using these as a good guidance point, and they've been pretty reasonable for a very long time. So they're a good basis to work from.
Yeah. So do you want me to, if you want to bring up I think before I even open the spreadsheet, when you are doing financial advice for people out there in Australia land, granted, you kind of only do complex, high net worth, crazy stuff, but middle Australia, mum and dad, I've always kind of thought if you own your house, you know, $1,000 or $1,200 a week, most people, that's pretty good, right?
You'd think so, but everyone is different.
Right. There I've done.
And
There I
that's
went. I've made a big assumption,
made a
and
big assumption.
when we don't do that here.
What I find really interesting in 14, 15 years of doing this is how people live to their means. They earn an amount of money. You got two people working full time. And it's amazing to see when people do hit that retirement age or they decide to stop, they decided to decrease hours, whatever it is, their living expenses drop dramatically. And life continues on the same. And so I would always, and anyone I work with, you know, try and challenge them on this, on planning for retirement, is live to what your retirement would be now, because then you've got more surplus. And that could be put towards the super balance and increasing the outcome. But it could also just be a really good celebration and holiday when you do retire. You know, it sets you up for success because you can lean into it over time.
But the biggest problem I've seen over my time, and I still see it with my own family and with people that write into the Facebook group, we've spent 45 years or so in accumulation mode, and then overnight the switch is flicked and they're like, okay, now spendy mode. And the psychology of it to say, you want me to start to draw down on my investments, $80,000 a year or whatever that is, 50 grand, 60 grand, there's a psychological shift that needs to happen, right?
Huge shift. It's a scarcity piece. You go from, I will get paid next month, to this is all the money we have forever. And we can do amazing charts and graphs and very pretty pictures and all the rest of it. But the idea at the end of the day is that that's all you've got. And as you approach retirement, we see this at the moment with a bit of market upset, people start getting a bit jumpier, you know, and they're like, well, what if the day I retire is the day the market crashes? You know, and I've suddenly got 30% less or whatever it might be. That becomes so much more real because you don't want to go back to work. You're done. You're tired. You've been tired for a while. You know, and then double that up with the fact that now you're not at work. So you've got to fill in your time. You've got to spend time together. If you're in a couple, you've got to spend time, you know, doing things that to bring you self-esteem and joy and purpose, because a lot of us got that from work. And those things can also cost more money. So you've got this hesitance to go and do new things and try things and spend money because you don't want to run out of money, but also you don't want to run out of money. So 100%. That scarcity is huge.
All right. Well, let's have a look at some numbers. And for those watching on YouTube, I'll go there now. So we've got the spreadsheet up. Okay. Do you want to maybe go through, do you want to talk about the pension numbers first for those listening only, and then the income test? So the asset and the income test first?
Yeah, sure. So this was a crucial part of what we looked at because we wanted a mix between those who need to rely on all, some of, or no age pension. And we should all aspire to not have to rely on the age pension. But for a lot of people, it does come in down the track as well. So these numbers here are just the asset test and income test. There's two ways you are assessed when you're applying for the age pension. And they look at either how much money you have or how much money you earn. And this is, you know, we're talking age pension, so you're over 67 and you're now looking at retirement and you're thinking, I can apply for this now. Both people, you know, assumedly in all these scenarios have stopped work altogether. So you've got your full pension, which is anything less than that figure means that you receive the full amount. And then you've got your part pension cutoff, which is you get a part pension. So if we look at that single column, full pension at 314,000, and it decreases up until 697,000.
So just for that, the full pension, that's $314,000 of assets for a single, excluding the home.
Correct.
So if someone has 250 or 300,000 in their super, and they are single and own their home, they would still get the full pension.
Correct.
Pretty good.
Well, one of the little traps in that and clarifying points is that is all assets, not just financial assets. So they're going to look at your house, they're going to look at your car, your contents as well.
So
as well
sorry,
as your
you
financial
said
assets.
look at the house. I thought that the house doesn't come into it.
Sorry, the contents of the house,
Contents.
so whatever's
Okay,
inside.
cool. Yeah, so your house and contents.
Correct. So your home that you live in is exempt, but not your holiday house. If you happen to have one, it's always a question that comes up. But your holiday house that you live in is exempt, but they'll look at your contents. But they're not going to say what is the replacement value of your contents. They're looking at fire sale value.
Maybe my contents are worth $50,000 at the moment.
Yeah, it's not an insurance policy. It is a fire sale value. What do they have to get for it? If they sold it right now, it's the same with the car.
Yeah.
So it's not if you went and bought it brand new, it's the what's the red book number on it as well. So that is included inside of that. So if you were 250 plus some contents in a car, you'd still be under that 314 as a single.
Yeah.
You would receive the full singles pension, which is just under 30 grand.
Yeah, cool. And just for the full pension single income test of 5.5 grand, what usually will enter the chat and bite first, the asset test or income test?
For most people, if they're not working at all, it's the asset test.
Right.
Yeah. So what they do is they run both tests,
Yep.
and then they give you the lower one.
Right. Okay.
And so if you're not working at all, and you've got no defined benefits or overseas pensions or anything like that, generally it's the asset test for most people.
Yeah.
But if you've got someone who's still working a little bit, maybe you've got an overseas pension, maybe you worked for the government for a while and you're getting one of those old super payouts, they then usually jump straight onto the income test because the income test limits are quite low.
So if someone was a single homeowner and they had under $697,000 of assets, so super, your car, your clothes, everything, you would still be able to get some pension.
Correct.
So it tapers down. Awesome. Talk to us about the couple there.
So the couple numbers are higher because you've got two people. And so the numbers as a couple are 470 for the full pension.
And that's assets. Yep.
Assets, yep. And then 1,047,500 for the top end cap out. And that's as at today, which is the 17th of March. These numbers change twice a year, so they index regularly. And so you can have $1 million of assets, excluding the home, as a couple, and still get some form of age pension.
Even if it's $3 a week and the concession card or whatever they give you,
and you get the concession card.
Yeah.
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 And that card, depending on your circumstances, can be 5 or 10 grand worth of savings on bills and medication and those sorts of things. So it can be quite a drastic improvement to the budget.
And the income thresholds for full and the cutoff for a couple. And is that couple as in a household?
Yes. Yeah, that's right. So you can have someone who's still working, earning 80 grand a year and potentially be getting a small amount of pension.
Yeah, awesome.
So I think I've got my on the figures. I might have them back to front on that table. Just looking at it on the full and the cutoff. I think I've got the axis wrong.
Oh yes,
But
yes, yeah.
Yes, yeah. So your full amount 9,762 up to 99,000.
Yep.
Versus 5,500 up to 65,000.
Yeah, sweet.
Yeah. Yeah. So you can see when you're looking at this, if neither of you are working, chances are you're going to be assessed under the asset test. If you want to do some work or you might have some of those old products, it's the income test.
Hang on. The full cutoff, you've got here 99.7. That's right, isn't it?
Yeah.
So it's not around the wrong way.
Oh. No, I had single couple up the top. That's why I think I got...
Oh, okay. Cool. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
This is all confusing for everyone, including me.
Yeah. So interestingly with this, and probably something worth noting is when they look at your income for the income test, for most investments, they don't actually take what you really got as income. They do what's called deeming, which is where they apply a calculation to the total pool and just go, you have this much of financial assets that are deemed. And the first 50 odd $1,000, they do it 0.25, and then the rest at 2.25%. And even if you earn more than that. So some people might look at this and go, oh, but I've got a lot of dividends coming in. I've got, that kind of stuff. For shares and your super, it's deemed.
Okay. So now if we go to what ASFA says they think are the numbers for comfortable retirement income for singles and couples, and I can see you've accidentally typo on the acronym.
ASFA and AFSA. See, I can't say it right. I can't type it right.
And I will let everyone know that I said to Nathan, I'm like, can you quickly just throw something together for me? And quick it was. Typo
yeah,
on all.
I didn't know it was got on the YouTube video when I sent it through. So there you
go. Okay, cool. So these ASFA numbers, where do they kind of get them from? Are they kind of surveying members and looking at pension payments that are happening?
Yeah, I think that they use, from what I understand, they use some ABS data to look at what are people spending and get a feel from that. But they want to be independent of that itself. So because they are an organization of super companies, they've got access to member data as well. They can talk to their members, they can engage them. So they know what people are drawing down, and they can, to your point, survey as well. So I think they use quite a few different data points to bring all that together. But they've got a unique vantage point, I think, which makes it a decent number to work from.
Yeah, so they're basically saying if you're 65 to 85 as a single, a comfortable retirement is 52 grand, just under 53 a year, so call it $1,000 a week. And a modest is 32,000 a year. But for a couple, 73,000 is comfortable per year, homeowner, and modest is 50.
And I think modest is a very kind word. Like single person on 32 grand a year, it's not a lot of money. That's a homeowner, so they're not paying for that. But
but by the time you pay friggin' $5,000 of insurance, upkeep, and all that
rates
on the home, rates.
Yeah. So I think that that low end is a very low end, but there are people out there. There's plenty of older Australians in $2.5 million homes living on full pensions, living on 30 grand a year, but paying enormous rates and things. But I wouldn't say they were living modestly. Is probably not the word I would use.
Yeah, and then so for 85 plus, they're saying about 49 grand a year for a single homeowner, and modest is 30, so not much movement there, and then a 67.5-ish for a couple for comfortable. So I think even just pausing on that, so everyone have a think, if you owned your house, could you live off $1,000 a year if you're single, or $1,000 a week, sorry, if you're single, or if you are a couple, can you live off, have you got your calculator there, 73,000 divided by 52? Can you live off, drum roll, $1,400 a week? I mean,
which,
I don't know, how much do you spend now? And that's kind of what you said at the start, is if you are 5 to 10 years away from retirement and you do own the home, well, do your budget and just see what the numbers are like, and if you can get used to living off under X amount per year.
It's a lot of the budgeting techniques out there are like, do a percentage of your income to this, percentage of your income to that. A really interesting approach to that is, if I didn't have the mortgage or rent, can I live off $1,400? And then work towards that. Set yourself that target and see what life would look like. I'd be interested to see. Yeah, I've seen people who are well below it. I've seen people well above it. Be interested to see what people's numbers come in at.
Yeah. So that's kind of setting the scene of what Centrelink pension cutoffs are, what some type of framework or guidance is from an association of how much people need. We'll take a break. When we come back, we're going to have a look at how far we get from the money that we've got based on a few examples. We'll be back right after this. We asked you in the Facebook group, health is everything, especially in retirement. What's one simple health tip or hack that has made a big difference for you? Marie started by saying, be active doing something you love. I work in aged care, and the people who have the least mobility issues are those who have farmed, gardened, sailed or swam, or just been outdoors doing something they love and enjoy. Plus, eat healthy, have a treat, but don't get overweight. Well, good tip there from Marie. Have you got that document up?
No.
Okay. I've emailed it to you. I'll just keep reading some. Jennifer said walking. Julie said strength and movement. Do something for someone else. That's a good one there. Renelle, intermittent fasting, cutting the carbs and understanding how blood sugar works and how it affects our health. Intermittent fasting always a good way to save money as well.
No breakfast.
Exactly.
Can't have that avocado on toast without intermittent fasting.
No.
The DEXA scan is an interesting one.
Yeah, so Michelle says get a DEXA scan. What is that? Is that the bone density thing?
Yeah, so you think about, when you go to some gyms and you have those handles that you put your hands on and it tells you your body fat, but yeah, they're kind of like, that's not 100% accurate. This is where you lay in like a scanner, something that you do with paper, and it maps out your bone density, your fat concentrations, your muscle density, and all the rest of it. It can be really good insight into your body composition, which can then, if you, I suppose, work with the right people around that, help you improve it. But yeah, that's a good one.
Jan said, knees replaced before retired using my sick leave entitlements. That's actually, you know what, Jan? There's some things that continue to surprise me. And that one I like because
I like that a lot.
When you retire and end your work, they're not paying out your sick days. So, I mean, as an employer, it's cheeky, but it's within the rules. Go for it. I love that.
Yeah.
That's so good. What'd Pete say?
Always walking the kids to school, come hail, rain, or sunshine. Keeps us all moving and creating good habits, and sets a great example for your kids as well. It just becomes normalized that you walk as much as you can, sets them up.
Marguerite, pickleball, fitness, agility, strategy, balance, fun, and social. You can play slow and safe or fast and hard. I also do intermittent fasting and have a high protein, low carb.
I tell you, pickleball's there's a couple of pickleball clubs that my name's been passed around on. People have come to me because of people they spoke to at pickleball. So apparently pickleball is taking off.
I want to join one in Newcastle. Helen said, I have yearly preventative health checks. So there you go. Thank you so much for continuing the discussion in the Facebook group. But now we're going to get back into some of these numbers and we'll let you go on with your day, everyone. Okay, so Nathan, how do we want to pluck this chicken? Do you want to maybe talk to us?
I split it up in the couple and single. I kind of tried to line it up around the caps of the age pension.
Yes.
So that we give a bit of a guide. So for the couples, I went with, this is for homeowners.
Yep.
I went with 450, being just below.
Okay, so that's the combined super balance.
Combined super balance.
Yep.
So just below, allows for 20 grand of a car and a bit of contents, right?
Yep.
And then 690 was actually the amount that ASFA recommended you have as a couple. So that's where I got that from.
Okay, cool.
And then $1 million, because it's a nice round number that people throw around all the time. And then I went 1.5 because I wanted to sort of show what, pushing that extra bit can look like as well. And obviously anything above that, is better off. But the other reason I did that is that there's a sort of a rule that a lot of advisors use when doing envelope calculations called the 5% rule. You apply 5% to a balance, and that's what you can kind of draw down on for the rest of your life. So that 1.5 mil was a rounded up version of the comfortable living amount for a 65 to 85-year-old. And then I did the same thing for single. But if we start there, if we start at the 450 end, 450, we're going to get a full pension.
Right.
$44,855.
Yep.
We can draw 5%, or we have to draw 5% of our super at that age. So we're going to get an extra 22,000. So we're getting 63 grand a year.
Yeah.
And as a minimum.
That's pretty good. And I just want everyone to kind of acknowledge and not freak out that in this example, if there was a super balance between two people of 450,000, you with the super balance and the age pension, we're talking $66,000 a year income. That's pretty good, provided you own your house.
That's 66 grand not taking huge amounts out of your super.
Yeah.
You know, like if your super earns about 5% in retirement, which is, I'd say reasonable, Glenn, for a retirement investment, something not super aggressive over time. That means your balance shouldn't change too much over time as well. So it gives you a bit of security to know that we talked before about, panicking about that. This is all my money. Well, I'm only drawing out what I earned, give or take on the long term. It's still $66,000 a year at 450.
But the thing to note with that there of 450, if you did withdraw your full super balance tomorrow, went to the casino, blew it, and it disappeared, you're not getting any more age pension because you're at the max.
Correct.
Yeah. And
I mean, you'd still keep getting the age pension, but you're not going to get any more.
Exactly.
That is the full amount, yes.
Yeah. And you're saying, talk to us about this runs out in 17 years thing. Is that the depleted super balance? You've got 17 years?
Correct. So what I did is I just did 20 years. In 20 years' time, what's the balance? It's kind of like a fixed point in the ground to compare to.
Yep.
And then how long would it take us to run out of money if we lived on the comfortable couple's living amount of $73,000? So instead of drawing the 66,000, you take out the full 73.
Yes.
So your super balance is going to go down each year.
Right.
You're not going to get any more pension, as Glenn said, because you've already got the most you could get. And so you're drawing into your super over time, and in 17 years, you have no super left. That's what it says there.
Okay, so that's good because at least that gives, and again, this can all be subject to risk tolerance, how much you are spending, how much you are drawing down. And for a single of 300 grand super, they're also getting the maximum age pension.
Yep. Yeah, 29,700.
Yes.
So the full amount for a single.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I was looking for the full pension numbers, but they're it there for a single and couple. Yep.
And then they'd be drawing 5%, again, 15,000. So that's still, $45,000 a year. That's $800 a week. Which is more than the modest number we were talking about before.
And and based on these numbers, the super balance would last 9 years.
Runs out a lot faster.
Yeah. And what kind of assumptions have you used in terms of return and inflation?
Yeah, as I said, this is really basic stuff. So I use a 3.2% inflation.
Yep.
So I went a bit more conservative, but also factoring in recent years. A lot of people would use a 3, a bit higher. And then I used a 5% return.
Yeah.
Net of fees, which again is, is pretty fair, but also not particularly aggressive.
Yeah, cool. Let's go through now the next one, the super balance of 690 for the couple.
Yeah, so 690 is the number that ASFA say you need for a comfortable retirement. And so I thought I'd test that. I was like, where's that come from? Because it feels like it's going to run out really quick. But the difference between this one and the one before it is as you draw into your super, you're going to get an increase in the amount of pension you get because you'll have less money.
And that's kind of why I wanted to just peg that with the first example. If you spend all your super, the age pension isn't going to give you more money outside of the, regular indexes.
So in these numbers, in 20 years' time, you should have about, in today's dollars, probably about 150 grand. Which I've got two lines in that for those of you playing at home. One of them is the dollar value and the other one is factored in for inflation. And then the money should run out in roughly 23 years.
And I think the more I see this and the more that I see the kind of average super balances of Australians that are over age 65, providing they do own their house, I don't think there's any huge alarm for concern if you do own your house and you do have a healthy super balance.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
but there are plenty of people, Nathan, who do not own their house and do not have a healthy super balance. But we had to kind of make some type of assumption to start with, right?
Yeah, if I'd put in the non-homeowner as well, we would have been here for a really long time.
Yeah.
I think the sad reality is the system is built for you to have a home. We have the 4 pillars of retirement, which the system is built on, and one of them is owning your own home. So not having that key component, could add anything from 24 to 36 to 50,000 to $70,000 a year in rent on top of these expenses, which is, it's a big difference in the outcomes that we're looking at here.
So just to kind of speed it on, and I would encourage everyone to look at this spreadsheet in the YouTube video. If you open YouTube, you can skim, within the first 20 minutes or 15 minutes, you'll see it pop up. So 690 super balance runs out in 23 years, which is awesome. Age pension of 26 grand a year, drawdown of $34,000. For a single 450 super balance, age pension of at 19,000, and assuming that you're drawing 5% or 22,000, we've got 13 years drawdown.
So that 13 years is if you live on the comfortable amount,
right?
Which is more than that minimum drawdown. Yeah. So those first 2 numbers, the 19 and 22, like reasonably over time. I mean, your super will make you take more out as you hit the different ages. But, that's sort of like a safe line to put in the sand. If I take 5% out of my super and I get the age pension, I'm not going to see a huge change in my super balance over time. But in order to hit that comfortable level, according to ASFA, you're going to draw down in 13 years.
Yeah.
So, and you can start to see there's quite a divergence between being in a couple and being a single as well. So there's a gap there that we're seeing between these numbers.
Yeah, the system isn't kind if you're not in a relationship or have a partner, and if you don't own your home at age 67.
Yeah, running a household is expensive. Running 2 is expensive, and renting in either of those circumstances is even more expensive. Yeah,
$1 million of
the magic number that everyone says, right?
A combined super of $1 million or assets. Well, super, we'll just say. You're getting $3.5 grand a year of age pension as a couple.
Yeah, so you just get a little bit. Get a little bit.
Little weekender holiday, thanks to Centrelink. Drawing 50 grand a year plus the 3,000 from Centrelink gives you 53,000 a year. Now, on that, if you do have a bigger super balance, Nathan, you probably may have had a higher income over your working life. And this is where you need to just get some advice based on your own situation. But someone earning, someone retiring with $1 million super, they're probably going to be living off more than $1,000 a week. But for completeness, you're telling us that just that amount will run out in 26 years. If
they live on the 73,000.
Yes. Yep.
Which is an alarm bell. If you've got a household income of 300,000-400,000 a year, chances are you're probably living on more than 73 grand.
Yeah.
Most people that we speak to are. If you're not, awesome. You'd be smashing the mortgage, pumping your super balance up. But yeah, that's hopefully a little bit of a wake up call for those who don't have a really good handle on that.
This diagram here, so this $1 million and then the 53,000 with age pension and the 5% drawdown, the ASFA comfortable column underneath that says 26 years, that's drawing more than the 5% above, right?
Correct. Yes. That's living on the ASFA comfortable amount.
Yes, which we know is that 73,000. Awesome. And this is
So
why
you're taking an extra 20 grand out.
yeah, it's very hard to do this on just podcast only, hence why we did the YouTube as well. A single at $650,000. And this is the kicker. They're getting the same pension as a couple at $3,500. Is that fair?
And that's
not sure. I don't write the rules or make the judgments.
But
I will.
You know, theirs still runs out in 18 years. So they're running out much, much sooner again. Yeah. And then if we stretch it out to 1.5, this is when it sort of gets a bit interesting. So you can see 75,000, 1.5 million, 5% of that, 75,000 minimum payment. No pension. We've got more than we can get the pension. So we're 100% self-funding. And 75,000, or 73 is less than 75. So arguably, your super shouldn't run out if you're living on less than what it should be earning over that long period of time.
Yeah, okay. So basically, 1.5 in super for a couple that's a homeowner. If you do live off the 75 grand a year or 5%, you've got no issues of your money ever running out. But on that, this is a thing, guys. I've had clients over the journey, and you might even think this as well. Your super, a lot of people are like, we want to invest our money, but we don't want to deplete the capital. We just want to live off the earnings or the interest. It's okay to eat into your capital over time. And a good advisor could work this out. So, okay, here's $1 million. We can increase your living expenses for the next 5 years at, 80 grand a year. And then slowly over time, we can taper that down, because potentially the older you get, the less you might be spending on stuff. Not always, but I think it's just good to call out that it's okay to eat into your capital and live off your super. And then for that one, over time, Centrelink will come online once you've spent $500,000.
Yep, exactly.
And this is why when you work with your advisor about to retire and do all that stuff, having a look at the figures, if you had to renovate the house and you're like, oh, we were going to renovate it with 100 grand or whatever, it might be worth pulling the 100 out of super, renovating the kitchen or bathroom, had to do it anyway, and that gets you online with some age pension. So that could also work.
It's a really interesting conversation you have with people who inherit money during their retirement, where you might retire and you're comfortable at a certain level. Maybe you're a bit on the pension. Maybe you've got, 690,000. You're living on a comfortable amount, and then all of a sudden you end up with another 500,000. Pension's gone. You've just got too much. And the safety net of knowing that the pension comes in no matter what goes back to what you talked about scarcity. That being on a pension means I get that payment every single fortnight, and now I am entirely paying for this myself. And that's scary. Even though you've got more money, over $1 million, but it's like, oh, but when it's gone, it's gone.
Yeah. And in finishing this, where are we here? If you're a single person with $1 million in super, well, that money is basically going to last 27 years.
Yeah. So again, it's in that figure, the 5% is lower than the ASFA amount, so you're drawing into it more over time.
Yeah.
So that was a bit more arbitrary, that one. I just picked $1 million.
Yeah.
But I figured it was the number that everyone talks about.
So thank you so much for putting those figures together. For me, as just the host of a retirement podcast and running the Facebook group and hearing a lot of people's stories, it does remind me that Australia, it's relatively pretty good system to live a comfortable retirement. Like there is, there's some good scenarios here, and it is a completely another discussion. if you do find yourself that you've got all this super and you're still renting, do you buy a house when you retire and have less super balance? So at least we got the home, we've got the security of the accommodation sorted. And like we always say, every situation is so different. It's really important to just see an advisor and get some numbers crunched based on your own situation.
Yeah. I think if you're in that, if you don't own a home and you've got a decent sum, or you're in that bracket where it's just above the maximum pension, but below no pension, there's a different reason you're going to seek an advisor. It's about optimizing that scenario and making the most out of what you've got. But the system is kind of beautiful in the way that most people within those bounds end up being able to live at least the modest amount, but I'd say somewhere between modest and comfortable without too much stress.
Yeah. And it is a friendly reminder, if you are listening to this and you are under age 50, because there's a lot of you who do listen under age 50, even though we target this at 50s and 55s and above, you've got no excuse. I need you to start contributing to your super. It's as simple as that. Just over time, a little bit more. You're not retiring early. Everyone says they do and all that. No, just focus and pump your super, because it's the best game in town for tax-effective investing.
It's purely mathematics, but 5% more over 30 years is 30% more super.
Yeah.
So you put 5% of your salary in, and that's just what you do. You just forget about it and away you go.
Well, we might leave it there, Nathan Fradley, unless you've got any other closing comments.
I think there's a couple of things that come into this conversation when we start making it a bit more complex around, like, where do you live, close to family, downsizing, conversations like granny flats and things come up. I also want to help out my kids, all these kind of stuff. This is where you start adding complexity. I think that's where bringing an advisor in is really, really important. And the other one you might see a bit of information on, which I'm sure Glenn will do something on eventually, will be these things called lifetime annuities, which are a product that's been around for a long time, but the government is requiring super funds to come up with an offering as part of their process, because they've been too accumulation or accumulator heavy. And we're going to see them appearing from July. And they're a lot more complicated than this sort of stuff, and it's important you get those right.
Yeah, and I think we will revisit that. I'll have a chat with Martin, and because he's just been so busy, I can't get him on the podcast. So, hey, if you can't get Martin, you got to get the best, don't you, Bradley?
Make sure you tell him that.
I will. So there we go, everyone. Thank you so much for listening and watching on YouTube. My name's Glenn James. This is Retire Right. And thank you, Nathan. We'll see you guys soon. Bye.